Hello, my name is David Strouser, and I'm here to talk to you today about job exploration counseling. Before we begin, a little background about myself. Currently, I'm a PhD student at the University of Illinois, where I study how young adults with disabilities transition into work. I also specifically focus on interagency collaboration between schools, community rehab partners, and vocational rehabilitation agencies. This interest is informed by my own work experience in Boston, Massachusetts, where I worked at an employment supports program that supported young adults with disabilities, specifically individuals with intellectual disabilities. Also, during this experience, I also collaborated with Boston Public Schools to help run a project search program. So enough about me, and let's dive into our agenda for today. I'm going to start off by just introducing the concept of job exploration counseling and really just defining it. So if this is a new term, I think you're going to find that it's something that is something that you're doing a lot of already. Providing, I guess, more of a definition and helping explain exactly what job exploration counseling is. Then I'm going to discuss theories related to it. And this is more just to provide reasoning on why job exploration counseling is an important service for us to provide to young adults with disabilities. Then I'm going to share an example of different types of job exploration counseling, and then finish that off with an example of a sequence of ways that you could provide job exploration counseling services. The main goal of this webinar is to have you walk away feeling empowered that you can do job exploration counseling, that this is something that would be beneficial to your students, and something that is accessible, something that through this webinar that you feel confident and comfortable providing this service to your students. So let's start off with, what is it? What do we mean when I say job exploration counseling? In its most basic way, job exploration counseling is a process, is an action that helps a student learn more about themselves, something that we're going to define later as a vocational identity, and learn about jobs or careers that could fit within their own vocational identity. So another way to look at this is how can I find a job that works for me, that meets my needs, that meets my expectations, that meets my wants and desires, and all those things that go into you feeling happy and supported in your work environment at work. So how do we do this? We do this through multiple ways, right? We have to learn about ourselves, right? So we have to do things like a vocational interest assessment or values assessment, or talk about, hey, what's my dream job? These are really important steps because it helps a person or your students understand what it is about them that they are looking for in a job. What is their vocational identity? Another way that we find that job exploration counseling is helpful is looking at environments. What are the work environments that are best for me to participate in, me being a student? So one thing we want to do is, what kind of jobs do I like to do? What type of jobs meet my current skill set? What are maybe some careers that I want to explore? What do I need to do to meet that career? Do I need to do more trainings? Do I need to go to school? Do I need to get a high school diploma? Do I need an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree? What do I need to participate in this career choice? So in a way, broadly speaking, job exploration counseling is allowing us to provide a service that helps a student better understand themselves and better understand work environments and what options are out there. Another thing with that that's important to note too is labor market analysis. When we say things like that term, we're basically talking about what types of jobs are available in my community, what types of jobs uh, have really good outlooks, right? What types of jobs are growing, what types of jobs are dying, perhaps, or not becoming as prevalent. And so those are also parts of job exploration counseling. So briefly, that's what I mean when I refer to job exploration counseling. Despite the title, job exploration counseling, it absolutely does not need to be done by a counselor. This is not something that is uniquely done or performed by a counselor, though it is something that is done by counselors. It can be done by many professionals and families and other support systems, right? So I'm hoping that when you finish this webinar, you feel empowered that, hey, this is something I can do. And many of you are probably already telling yourselves, hey, this is something I am doing. And if that's you, I think that this webinar is still going to be helpful, because I think it will help define specific things that you're doing and perhaps make you think more creatively or differently about how you're already approaching this type of service that you're delivering. So, why is job exploration counseling something that's being promoted by, let's say, someone like the University of Illinois? Well, we as academics and experts feel that there is a lot of theories and research to suggest that this is an important thing for us to understand. The Minnesota theory of work adjustment in particular is closely related to job exploration counseling. And this theory is basically talking about what we call a person-environment fit. So as a person, you have a specific identity, and we'll talk about that in the next slide more in detail. But we have certain things that make us who we are and make us want to participate in certain works. And then we also have environments, and environments are your work environment, a school, a hospital, business setting, whatever. And it's the Minnesota theory of work adjustment talks about what is that relationship between the person and the environment, and how well does that fit. So what we found is a good fit is when the person's needs are met and the environment's needs are met. And that makes sense, right? A good job is where you feel that you are meeting all of your needs. Maybe your pay is good, you like your coworkers, you have autonomy, all those things. And the environment's very much also having their needs fit. They are satisfied with the work you're performing. You have the skill set, you have all the trainings necessary to do the job. And so that's what the theory behind job exploration counseling. Because as I mentioned previously, job exploration counseling helps us learn more about ourselves, or your student is able to learn more about themselves. And it allows a student or yourself to learn more about different types of work environments. And so I brought up this term at the beginning, vocational identity. And when I'm referring to that, I'm referring it to one of the identities that you encompass that is obviously work related. So things that about your vocational identity are, what are your interests and what are your values? So many of you do assessments and are probably familiar with vocational interest or value assessments, where we look at and analyze what types of jobs would I be interested in? What type of things am I looking for in a work environment? Do I want to work remotely? What do I want? Do I want to work in a group? Do I want to work independently? Do I want to work close to home? Do I want to work in the middle of the day? Do I care when I work? All these things influence your vocational identity. Another thing that's really important about it is, what do I, kind of the dream job, what do I aspire to be? So when we think about that, we want to think about, okay, if this student aspires to be this profession, what are the steps to get there? And that's part of your vocational identity and helps motivate any individual through perhaps those steps that maybe aren't as desirable. Another thing that's really important about vocational identity is it's very fluid. And this is especially true. Research really suggests this for young adults. And this makes sense, right? Vocational values, for example, changes drastically as a 16-year-old, perhaps living at home, to when you're 22 and maybe you're living by yourself for the first time and you're having to pay the bills and all those things. So those are examples of how this vocational values and interests can change over time. And this is important because it reinforces the need to do job exploration counseling, perform this service multiple times and with multiple stakeholders, because there's research to suggest that we often are maybe influenced by our environment, or maybe we'll get different responses if I, as a teacher, ask a question who's very familiar, and perhaps maybe someone who's not as familiar might ask a question. And so we want to realize that to fully understand a person's vocational identity, we want to get data from multiple stakeholders in multiple environments. So this is kind of really focusing on job exploration in terms of as a mechanism to help a student better understand themselves. Next, I'm going to talk about how the work environment how job exploration analyzes work environments to see if that work environment is going to be a good match for that person. So why do we care about the work environment? And I think it's with COVID especially, and the advent of different styles of or different work environments and how it's being conceptualized, I think it's become increasingly an important discussion to have, right? So let's talk about work environments in terms of being safe, being accessible, perhaps being close to home. These are all considerations that you might want to take into place. Work environments can also mean, what type of manager do I have? What kind of coworkers do I have? Is this a work environment that I see myself wanting to be in for a short time or maybe a longer time? And then other things we want to look at that are in work environments are, what is needed for me to be in this job? Are there training, education requirements? Do I need skill sets? Do I need to do an internship before I get this job? All of these things are needing to be discussed through job exploration counseling so that your students can better understand what work environments might be available to them and might be best for them. So how do we do this? How do we help our students better understand themselves and better understand work environments and jobs that are available to them? We do this through a variety of activities. I've listed here a handful, but these are definitely not the only activities available to students. I want to highlight a couple on this slide. One, I think it's important to note that there's different types of activities in terms of individual and group, and then there's also formal and informal. So an example of perhaps a more formal individualized assessment or activity might be career vocational assessment. This could be done by a teacher, paraprofessional, vocational rehab counselor. And this could be done in a way that maybe it's an interest inventory or an ability interest inventory. These are all things that would help a student better understand themselves in perhaps like a more formal way, right? Maybe they'll get a Holland, they'll get an interest code, a RIASEC interest code, so they can identify jobs that meet their interests. Or maybe they walk away with a more complete career assessment that talks about their travel skills, their social skills, other sorts of information or data points that help them better understand themselves. And then it can also be very group orientated. So for example, career speakers. I think that this is a really helpful way to have students explore what types of jobs are out there. Something that I did in my work experience is I would have participants in our program that were already working in the community come and talk to participants who were aspiring to work in the community and share their experience, share what they do, share what it's like to work. These type of experiences can be really helpful because you only know what jobs are available by what you know. So it's one of those things that just really can expand thinking for students. They might really, hey, I never knew that job even existed, and now I could potentially pursue that as a career. These are things that can be really insightful and important, and can be a really important early intervention, right? So these types of activities can be done at various points. This isn't something that should be waited for when a student's 21 years old and about to leave. This can be something done at a very early age, just kind of getting their feet wet on, hey, what's this employment thing looking like? So I want to then talk about a way that you could potentially sequence job exploration counseling. As you might remember, I talked about when we were talking about vocational identity, specifically how it's a fluid thing. It's something that changes a lot. It can change based on our experiences, based on different things that are happening in a person's life. And there's a need to take assessments or provide this service multiple times. This isn't something where we job exploration counsel at the beginning of the year and we're good. This is something that we need to frequently check in on. So something that I think is kind of an important potential sequencing is going through, maybe having this sequence happen throughout maybe the course of a semester, let's say 4 months. Maybe I start off the semester with a career day, and I have multiple age groups of, maybe ranging from 14 to 21 years old, and they're coming to a career speaker day, and they're having an engaging conversation about what type of jobs are out there. And this might be something that's is done in a group setting, so it's not necessarily targeted to a specific student. But you do this career day, you get some of your students excited about, hey, work, this might be something I want to do. Maybe you invite your rehab, the VR counselor at your school to maybe help you conduct an interest inventory. I bring up the VR counselor as a way to provide an example of how we bring in potentially another person in to help you evaluate and provide maybe someone they're not as familiar with, because the VR counselor might not be there all the time. Maybe they're only there for the ISP, but it also provides a opportunity for you to connect with another support that might be available to that student. So anyways, you conduct this to more targeted, individualized interest inventory assessment. And this perhaps gives you insights to a student who's more ready to be participating in a workplace, in a work environment setting. And maybe you have a connection, or maybe by going through the process of having this inventory assessment, interest inventory assessment, you're able to find a work-based learning experience that matches the student. And maybe it's something that you already have established, or maybe it's a new experience that you're targeting basically for the student. Either way, placing the student in this environment is absolutely going to require some job exploration counseling activities, right? So one thing that once we place them into this experience and we provide job coaching to them, we want to check in on them, right? Informally or formally, but probably most likely informally. Something that I would do all the time when I was job coaching, check in at, maybe lunch or during a break. How are you doing? How are you liking your job? Tell me what you like. Tell me what your favorite part is. Asking a little bit more specific questions about, hey, what did you like about your job today? Maybe asking about, hey, do you like where this job is? Do you like the location of it? These will help you understand your student better, but it will also train your student to think about, okay, what are some things I want to consider when I'm thinking about jobs or employment? Do I want to consider my commute? Do I want to consider where I'm at? Do I want to be 10 minutes away from my home? These are all things that informal connections or asking about informal job exploration counseling can help provide insights for the student. So why I selected this sequence, and I want to be clear that this sequence is absolutely like not the only way to do this. There's infinite amount of possibilities, but I think it's something that goes from a group to individual intervention that I think is really helpful, right? We want to be able to provide these services in an effective way. And sometimes that might mean in a group setting, sharing as much information about as many jobs as possible. That's certainly a valid reason to have a group job exploration counseling event. And then when we're having these more individualized interventions, they're very targeted and they're very specific. And we're getting a lot of feedback. We're asking all the time, what do you like? What do you dislike? And that's really helpful in terms of helping you understand your student better, but more importantly, helping your student understand, oh, what do I like? Do I like this job? Do I want to be doing this? Does this help me reach my career goal? These are all things that we want them to the more you ask it, the more the student will think about it. The other thing that I think is really important is there's multiple forms of evaluation. There's informal and formal. Not every job exploration council needs to be a formal sit-down assessment that's you and the student work one-to-one. Informal assessments are really helpful and can be done very easily, and I think can provide in some ways more candid responses from your students. And you'll know your student, your students the best, so you'll have a good idea of like what's that balance between the informal and formal evaluations. And the other thing that I think I want to highlight about the sequence, and the bottom two bullet points are related, right? The student's able to participate in a work-based learning experience and they're able to reflect upon it. That's really important, right? So when we know that vocational identities are fluid, we know that they're going to change. One reason why that changes, vocational identity changes, is because an experience happens, right? So having a work-based learning experience will absolutely influence the vocational identity. It will either reinforce it. So a student might be like, I love this job. I definitely want to do this. Or they might hate it. Or there might be just, I'm okay on it, I'm neutral. And those are all really important things for us to know. I also think it's really important that we give the students an opportunity to reflect on their own experiences and come up with their own ways to evaluate themselves, their own identity. Part of the vocational or the job exploration counseling is providing mechanisms for students to assess themselves and work on that skill so they can start asking themselves the questions on what do I like? What do I want to do? And have them take ownership of it. I mentioned this, but I really want to emphasize this. So I mentioned this in the sequence that this 4-part sequence is not the only way to do this. You can do this in so many different ways, in so many different forms, informally, formally, and there's no reason to limit yourself. So I think something that lean into your strength of, you really know your participants or your students, you really know about what environments they do well in at school, and perhaps giving them options or opportunities to succeed is really important, and adapting. Another thing is, this is a great opportunity for you to collaborate with other support systems, whether it's your VR counselor, whether it's another Maybe it's a nonprofit that provides employment services that is really committed to helping improve employment outcomes for young adults with disabilities. This collaboration is key because it's goes back to the idea of getting multiple evaluations, multiple stakeholders, maybe different environments. And it's also helping students adapt to that eventual transition out of school. There's going to be not just the teacher or not just their classmates that they've spent a lot of time with. And that's really important to have that process kind of happen slowly. And job exploration counseling could be a great gateway into doing that. And so the other thing, and I've said this now a lot, but it's worth repeating, the need to frequently check in with students. Job exploration counseling is definitely a service that needs to be done frequently. And like I said, it doesn't need to be a formal sit down, complete evaluation or assessment. It's something that can be done randomly, sporadically, it can be done formally, informally. It's just one of those things where we just want to constantly check in, and maybe checking in more purposefully, maybe asking, instead of how was work today, maybe ask some specific question like, how did you like doing this task at work? Those little things can help you help your student, right? I enjoyed organizing this shelf at work. Great. Maybe they like jobs where they are able to organize, or maybe they like the job because they can work independently, or maybe they like having a specific instructions on how to do something. These are all really helpful things for you to get, information for you to get from your students. It's also helpful information because the more you check in, the more you're going to reinforce to the student that this is about them, this is their interest, and they can kind of hopefully take more ownership and feel more in control of their development of their vocational identity and their aspirations. So as we wrap up this webinar, I want to just highlight a couple key takeaways. One, job exploration counseling is a really important part of connecting young adults with disabilities into work. It's really important because we want our students to get into jobs, but we also want them to be happy in their jobs. And one thing that we know based on the Minnesota theory of work adjustment is that they need to understand their own vocational identity, and they need to understand what it is what do they need in a work environment so that they can feel supported and feel like they're in a environment that lets them engage in meaningful work. And that kind of relates to the need to have assessments and evaluations in different ways and ways that are modified for the student, right? So if the student's skills or maybe there's a limitation that they have, and modifying the assessment so it better meets their unique needs is totally appropriate. And it's definitely not something there's one way to do this. So modify, customize, do all that. The other thing, third point I want to highlight is that job exploration counseling should increase the student's awareness of themselves. They should have a better understanding of their work identity, their vocational identity, what they value, what their interests are, what work environments would best meet that need. And then finally, we want to talk about what are the work environments available to the students, what types of jobs are available to them. Maybe it's something of helping them walk through, something that I would always get in my work was students always wanted, or my participants always wanted to work 8 to 2 because that was like our hours of our program. And they're like, that's what I want to do. That's my work hours. That's what's important to me. And I think what I'm saying that story is helping them understand or maybe some of those limitations of, if you work 8 to 2, you're limited in this way, or this might be difficult to find a job in this way. And so it's just helping them think about, okay, like what exactly could work, what could work look like. And then the other thing too is like future outlooks, right? We don't want to just think about what's the first job that they can get. We want to provide our students an opportunity to think long term. What is the best for me long term? And not just think about, well, I need to get a job because that's my ISP or that's my IEP goal. So those are kind of the key takeaways. I guess in summary, when I think of job exploration counseling, I think of it as a way for you as an educator to teach your student about themselves, their work identity, their vocational identity, and learn about work environments and what work environments might best meet their needs. So I think that that's really important. And I think it's a key to unlocking long-term success. So having students stay in their jobs, be happy in their jobs, and feel that they are being valued in their work environment.